it has come to my attention that I am in agreement with a member of the KKK. Yep. A gentleman by the name of Clarence Brandenburg. Clarence Brandenburg. Let me explain why I think Mr. Brandenburg, a member of the KKK, was right. You see, in 1964, Mr. Brandenburg was holding a KKK rally. And what he did was he invited the press to come to the rally to film it. And during this rally, you had people with their hoods on. You had some firearms there, a lot of foul language being used. I'm pretty sure he said some things that would have offended me highly, would have probably made me feel appalled, right? Probably would have hurt my feelings. And had I been there, some people probably would have said some things to me that would have been very hurtful, things that I probably didn't want to hear. During the course of this rally, they burned crosses, and he gave a speech. And in this speech, this is part of what he said. Listen to this. Mr. Brandenburg said, "If our president, our Congress, our Supreme Court continues to suppress the white Caucasian race, it's possible that there might have to be some revengeance taken." Revengeance. So, I actually went to go look up the word revengeance. I wanted to see if maybe somebody had a definition of it. And there was a definition in the Urban Dictionary. This is what it says about revengeance. It says that revengeance is the act of gaining revenge at a rate of at least 2.54 times greater to that of standard revenge and 1.61 that of standard vengeance. I thought that was very interesting. But in any case, those words landed him in jail. He was in violation of something called the Ohio Syndicalism Act. He was locked up. He was fined $1,000, and his sentence was between 1 and 10 years, I believe. So most people would say, you know what, good. He was saying some very hurtful things. This is hate speech, right? He doesn't like a certain type of people. He shouldn't be allowed to say that. Lock him up, right? There's a difference between free speech and hate speech. Obviously, Mr. Brandenburg didn't agree because he ran out of money trying to fight this. So he requested some assistance from the ACLU. In 1968, he appealed it to the Ohio District Court of Appeals, who upheld the lower courts. Obviously, Mr. Brandenburg didn't agree because he felt as if it violated his First and 14th Amendment rights. So he wanted to fight this thing, and so much so he ran out of money trying to fight it. He needed to request help from the ACLU. With the ACLU's help, he took his case to the Ohio First District Court of Appeals, who upheld the lower court's convictions. From then, he took his case to the Ohio Supreme Court. The Ohio Supreme Court dismissed the case without an opinion. That makes me think about some of the things that have happened going on with this election recently. How attempts to have cases heard in court were just dismissed without opinion. Different topic, different conversation. So from there, they took the case to the Supreme Court of the United States. And when the case was taken to the Supreme Court, something very, very interesting happened. The case was heard on February 27th, 1969. His lawyer, Mr. Alan Brown, I believe his name was, convinced him not to show up. He said, we'll take care of this. Probably a good move. You probably don't want to take someone who's been labeled as a racist. Probably a fitting title. But you don't want to take him and put him in front of the the judges. I think that was probably a good move. In any case, Mr. Brown took some heat for defending him. You know, they called him on the phone. They issued threats to him over the phone, but he held his ground and he decided to continue defending the case. So Mr. Brown defended him in court, and on June 8th, 1969, the Supreme Court rendered their decision. Interestingly enough, they returned a 9-0 unanimous decision that reversed the case, reversed the charges against him. But why? They came to the conclusion that the Ohio Syndicalism Act was in contradiction to Mr. Brandenburg's free speech. This was a unanimous decision. And as a result, there's something that's called the Brandenburg Test, something I hadn't heard of before. This was news to me, very educational. What is the Brandenburg Test? Well, the Incitement Test, or the Brandenburg Test, says that the constitutional guarantees of free speech and free press do not permit a state to forbid or prescribe advocacy of the use of force or of law violation, except where such advocacy or is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such. Take it, the key word there is likely. So as a result, there's two conditions that must be met. The speech can be banned if it is directed at inciting or producing imminent lawless action. And point number two, it is likely to incite or produce action. And this is what we see going on right now, especially when you're looking at trying to impeach a president. My thing would be to look at this test and see if what Donald Trump has said has met the conditions of this test. Should he have been banned in the first place? Were his words directed at inciting or producing imminent lawless action? So both conditions would need to be met. It would be likely to incite or produce action, and it must be directed at inciting or producing imminent lawless action. Just something to think about when you think about that. But going back, let's wind it up backwards. Why do I agree? Most people would, or a lot of people would think that as a black man, I would be delighted at witnessing a leader in the KKK be silenced. But I don't see it that way. You see, I'm under the firm belief that regardless of whether or not you want to hear what someone has to say, if you don't want to hear it, you can change the channel. You can just not be present. There's so many other things that you can do to not hear it. But to deprive somebody of their freedom to say what they think, provided it doesn't meet the conditions of this test, you're really shooting yourself in the foot. What I mean by that is, if you're okay with someone else being silenced because you don't agree with what they're saying, then you're okay with yourself being silenced because someone else doesn't agree with what you're saying. I have a problem with that. Me and this guy, probably wouldn't have gotten along. But who knows? Maybe if we got to know each other, we probably would have been able to meet eye to eye and get along. If we were able to have some deep conversations, maybe we could have never been friends, but would have been a level of respect there. And while I'm on the topic of respect, I respect people who speak their mind, whether I agree with it or not, because I know where they stand. And I'd rather deal with someone where I know where they stand rather than them feeling one way or having ill intentions and me not knowing about it. I think that's the honorable thing to do. Let your position be known. I'd rather be around a bunch of people who have something to say that I don't want to hear, but I know where they stand. So I can respect that. So going back to the Supreme Court thing, it was a 9-0 decision. It was unanimous. But think about what's going on now. Do you think something like that would happen now under the same circumstances? When you have Supreme Court justices who actually are in fear, or they're afraid of riots, the public might not be happy. Some people in the public might not be happy. And all of this was by design. It was all by design. So you have a combination of entities being willing to organize certain things in order to invoke fear, to strike fear into the hearts of civilians and government officials. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have people who are holding office, holding positions, who are afraid to do what they're supposed to do. They're afraid to do their job. They're afraid to do what's right or to be fair for fear of what may happen to them. I don't know. Maybe we just don't make people like we used to anymore. Or maybe we just don't see the ones that are made like they used to. Little side story here. I remember being in the chow hall at Fort Bragg eating, and we had pictures up on the wall. I remember seeing this picture of a soldier from, I believe it was the Korean War. He had his K-pot tipped back, cigarette in his mouth, walking. And I remember thinking to myself, it's cold. I served in Korea before. In the wintertime, it gets cold, really cold. This guy was hard as a rock. I think about how wars were fought a long, long time ago. They didn't have tennis shoes like we have now. They didn't have comfortable boots like we have now. They didn't have all this cold weather gear. It's like they built soldiers different back then. Go back even further. Go back to wars, the ancient wars that you hear about in history. Think about what those people went through. Those long marches. Think about what they had to wear. Think about their uniforms. Think about the weight of all of that stuff. It's like they just built people different. Nowadays we're soft. We really have become soft, and I'm wondering, I'm worried that maybe we just don't have it in us to stand up for ourselves like they used to, like we used to. That's a fear. I don't know, but deep down inside, I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's the case. I think we could get that strength back. Things just have to get bad enough to necessitate that. It'll be interesting to see where things go. But hopefully one day soon, we'll have people that have enough guts and enough intestinal fortitude to stand up for what's right, regardless of whether or not they agree with it, but to protect our own personal rights, freedoms, liberties, the ability to disagree but not suppress. It's going to be interesting. We're going to see where that goes. But who would have thunk it? Here I am, 2021, a black man, and I seem to be in agreement with the leader of the KKK. Thought that was interesting. Thought I would share that. But in any case, guys, take care and peace.